Hi guys, my name is Brian Cooper. I'm a graduate student at Northern Michigan University in the Exercise Science program. Today I'll be doing a video presentation for one of my classes on ice hockey and the energy systems involved in it. A quick little outline of the presentation. We'll go over the characteristics of ice hockey, game and shift length, along with some movement patterns we'll see in each shift. Then we'll go over the energy systems, just a brief description of each system and how it relates to ice hockey. And then we'll look at some studies that have tried to compare these energy systems or physiological measures to performance in ice hockey. And lastly, we'll discuss kind of when and how to train each of these programs or each of these energy systems for ice hockey players. This is one of my kind of favorite quotes from Brendan Shanahan when someone asked him, is ice hockey hard? His response was that you need the strength and power of a football player, the stamina of a marathon runner, and the concentration of a brain surgeon. Playing at those high speeds, having to make decisions within seconds, dictating whether you score, don't score, miss a pass, make a pass. And you're doing all this on a blade that's an eighth of an inch thick. So I always thought this quote from him was pretty interesting and a good description of ice hockey and how hard it is. It is a very physical, fast-paced game. Each shift you could see movements from straight ahead sprints, hard cutting, lateral movements, change of direction, left to right, forwards to back, short acceleration, long acceleration, those crossovers, moving again left to right, or brief cutbacks, stops and starts, huge component of the game. And all this is intersected by a brief recovery between shifts, and even during shifts, if there's an icing call or an offside, you have a few seconds to recover in between bouts. And success depends on a player's ability to really generate that power while skating. You want to beat your opponent to the puck, sustain that power throughout the hockey shift, and then your ability to recover during shifts to be able to produce that power continuously throughout the game. So, quick game breakdown. Depending on what level you're at, today this presentation will really kind of focus on the collegiate and semi-professional, professional level in terms of game length, shift length. Typically a game length is 60 minutes long with 3 20-minute periods. Each period is interspread with 10 to 15-minute intermissions. So there's an intermission between the first and second, and the second and third period. Shift length will usually last anywhere from 45 to 60 seconds. Comprised of multiple 10 to 15 second bouts of or bursts in each shift. The players aren't just kind of going all out at one speed, one direction the whole time. There's, like I said, that change of direction and kind of multiple bursts of activity, not just one constant activity. Rest between shifts, 2 to 3 minutes. This will really depend on your depth on the team, your line depth, position, defense, forward, whether you're playing on the power play, penalty kill, and so it's not just a constant 2 to 3 minutes rest. It could be shorter, it could be longer, so that's just something to keep in mind. So energy systems. Hockey has been dubbed kind of an anaerobic sport just because of that length of activity and shift length, but it does utilize all 3 energy systems like most team sports do, and it's important to keep in mind that you're not just turning each energy system on and off. All of them are always working, and it's really the intensity and duration of the activity that will dictate the percentage of each energy system to the energy provided for that activity. So the systems that 3 energy systems, that ATP PCR system, this is that 10 to 15 second burst in each shift. Then we have the lactate, that's that 45 to 60 second shift length. And then the aerobic system is that recovery between shifts. This also could play a larger role in energy contribution towards the end of periods, end of shifts, end of game. All right, so brief description of each energy system. The ATP PCR system, that's at high intensity exercise, short duration, short bursts, 0 to 15 seconds again. This is mainly powered by the intramuscular high energy phosphate, adenosine triphosphate, or ATP, and phosphocreatine PCR. Very limited stores in the body. That 0 to 15 seconds will drain these stores, so it is important that other energy systems can take over as duration of activity continues past that 0 to 15 seconds. And that leads us into the lactic or anaerobic energy system, and that'll be the 15 to 90 second range. And this energy for this system comes from the breakdown of carbohydrates or muscle glycogen, specifically that glycogen stored inside of the muscle. And that gets broken down through glycolysis to pyruvate, which then further breaks down to lactic acid. And we see that accumulation of blood lactate between that 60 and 180 seconds, and that is kind of the catalyst of this energy system, is that formation of lactate. And then finally, our aerobic energy system. This uses oxygen to break down carbohydrates, fats, and proteins in the presence, again, of oxygen. Fats and carbohydrates will be the big factors in this. We usually won't see proteins unless the stores are completely depleted and duration is kind of longer. Kind of some things associated with this is that Krebs cycle, beta oxidation, and electron transport chain. We really won't get into that too much today. But again, these provide energy when exercise continues beyond that 90 seconds. And this is a slow process. That is why those other two pathways are kind of more useful in those short duration activities, or used, because this is a slow process from the breakdown of fats and carbohydrates. All right. So now we'll look at a couple studies that have tried to compare off-ice physiological measures such as VO2 max, maybe some jump performances like vertical jump height, horizontal jump, some strength measures such as one rep max, squat, bench, etc. on playing performance in ice hockey. So in this first study, they compared anthropometric and physiological data to plus minus. Plus minus, if you don't know, if you're on the ice for a goal for your team, that's a plus. If you're on the ice for a goal for the other team, that is a minus. I don't know if this is the best indicator of playing performance for ice hockey. This can be misleading. There's no plus minus for power play goals, and then it doesn't take into account time on the ice, time played. So that's just something to keep in mind. But it measured 24 Division I male collegiate ice hockey players. Over a 4-day span, they measured height, weight, body composition, aerobic fitness, that was that graded treadmill VO2 max test, strength, speed, and agility. And what they found was the repeated sprints, 12 times 110, 110-yard runs, pull-ups, leg press, and bench press were significantly correlated with plus-minus score. Another one of these studies that try to compare aerobic fitness and blood lactate levels and percent body fat to players' net scoring and time played. This is a little bit better indicator of performance in ice hockey, but again, doesn't really show you the whole picture. So that's just something to keep in mind again. This one looked at 29 male Division I ice hockey players. They underwent a discontinuous incremental treadmill test for aerobic fitness and blood lactate levels. That LAC4, which was found to be significantly related to total minutes played, is basically just the lactate level taken at the 4th stage of that test. And then VO2 max was significantly related to the net scoring chances. So we're seeing there that kind of the anaerobic and aerobic systems are important to playing performance. You know, hockey, it's really hard to kind of measure the contribution of these different systems or power and strength to performance. So what we've done is taken off-ice measures and tried to relate them to on-ice measures. For this, you know, we've looked at skating speed and how it relates to off-ice tests. Results have been variable, but what we do see is a relation between some kind of jump test, that vertical jump or horizontal jump, which is kind of an indication of power, and sprint speed, kind of at that 35 to 40 meter distance, are highly related to skating speed. Again, it is kind of variable with group and gender on which test was more relatable or correlated more with skating speed, but we can kind of draw the generalization that the jump speeds and thus power are related to skating speed and performance. There is a mix again between VO2 max or that aerobic capacity to repeated sprintability. Again, differences in protocol are probably the reasoning behind the varied results, but this is just to give you an idea of how some off-ice measures were tried to compare to skating and playing performance in hockey. Alright, so now we've kind of looked at the why of the energy systems in ice hockey, and now we're going to look at the how and when to train each system. So we're going to start with the ATP PCR system. Again, that's that short duration kind of power. Those off-ice tests of vertical jump and sprint speed, kind of good indications of this system. And so how we want to train this is really through resistance training during the off-season, strength and power cycles. This can be done by the type of lifts you choose, those Olympic lifts, and then set and rep range, intensity and restoration. You manipulate those to kind of change the scope of what you're trying to train between strength and power and hypertrophy, etc. Some other ways to train this system: sled work, plyometric training, and then sprint and agility training are also good ways to train the system. Any kind of quick, fast movement that's generating power. Hockey can tend to be a very long season, especially if you do have more success and make it further into the postseason. And so a lot of teams are kind of limited on time they have to train in the off season, because that first part of the off season really needs to be focused on the rehabilitation of the player, because they very long, grueling physical season. They're stuck in that hip flex position that whole time. So that first part of that off season really needs to focus on kind of rehabilitation, fixing any alignment issues, working on that mobility and flexibility that might have been lost throughout the year. And so to kind of utilize your time, these bottom three, sled work, plyometric training, and agility training, you can put those into your dynamic warm-up to kind of save time before your resistance training sessions. And so kind of get work on that energy system before you go train for strength and power in the resistance training regimen over the off season. Next, training the lactic system. Personally, like I said, those hockey seasons are very long. These guys are living in that anaerobic kind of zone during each game, practice. And so when we hit that off season, we really don't need to work on this system or try to develop this system a whole lot, because it doesn't have that shorter adaptation period. So you can accomplish training this system during that preseason time. So for college hockey, school starts in September. First games usually don't happen until October. So you have that September, October to October time to really develop this system. And that'll also get developed while you're on the ice, during practices, especially if your coach kind of has an idea of each system and how to train it. Can also help in the training of this system. But off ice, usually shuttle runs, 200-meter runs, 400-meter runs, and then just playing around with that intensity, work duration, and restoration is how you're going to focus in on training this lactic system. So finally, training the aerobic system. There is kind of a mixture between how to train it and importance of training the aerobic system. A lot of European countries still go with that slow, long duration like bikes or runs to develop the system. There are some people who think this is not the way to go because those long, slow runs will kind of hinder your strength and power work through resistance training. However, I think that there is a time when you need to develop this system through that long, slow process. And then as the off season progresses and you get towards the playing season, you can switch that to kind of more of a specific time frame to kind of match the needs of ice hockey. So this will depend on the time of training cycle. So during the early off season, that rehabilitation kind of period and early strength development, so 2 to 4 week period, 2 times a week you should do a long, slow run. And we do need to run during the off season. These guys are stuck in that hip flex position. We want to get them up, get them moving during the off season. Don't just have them sitting on a bike all off season. And that's in that 65 to 75% heart rate max range, 130, 150 beats per minute. And then so as the off season progresses, we want to switch that to more tempo runs, shuttle runs, and slide board intervals, kind of more hockey specific, kind of length, time frame of activity and rest period. And then as we get into the preseason and in-season, you can kind of shift away from running into biking and skating interval work on ice, and that's just to kind of limit that wear and tear of running. That is a high compact movement, so we want to try to limit injuries by moving over the bike and skating interval work during the preseason. And so that is how to train each system. So we've looked at the why, we've looked at the how. Here are my references. Hope you guys enjoyed the presentation. Thank you.